get this clock.
Yeah.
Gotta fix that clock.
That's the clock we go by in court, so. So that's the clock I was going by as well. The ceiling lights are on if you want to.
Why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? Just at 6 p.m. Right? All right, well, welcome to the May 11th meeting of the Town of Berthoud Planning Commission. And I'm looking for right now I'm looking for the flag, but I don't see it. It's right in front of us, I guess.
Behind you.
Behind us? Oh, there we go, right behind me. Great. Like to start with saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Karen Anderson. I'm the current Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. I'd like to thank you for being here with us tonight. Jan Dowker, our chair, very recently resigned from the Plan Commission. And I think I speak for my fellow commissioners when I want to saying publicly that we thank her for her many years of very devoted service to the town of Berthoud. We'll miss her, I think, and hope that and wish her well. Okay, copies of tonight's agenda are at the table here, right up here in the front. Please take one if you so choose. We'd appreciate it at this time if you would mute your cell phone so that we don't have any disturbance. If you do need to take a phone call, please just walk out those double doors and have your conversation there, please. Now, I wanted to mention to you that the members of the Planning Commission are volunteers. We all have day jobs, families, that kind of thing. Our duty is to review the application materials that are provided to the Planning and Development Department. We hear testimony and we hear from the public, from the applicant, and from our staff. We discuss those matters before so that we can determine whether we believe that land use code has been met and protocols have been complied with. I have some brief comments about the role of the Planning Commission. For the audience, both that are here and those that are on Zoom with us tonight. I know at least Aaron's on Zoom with the city attorney. Okay. Hi, Aaron. Is there anyone else on Zoom this evening?
There is not.
There's not. Thank you. The Planning Commission really acts as an advisory board to the Town Board of Trustees. We review and make recommendations on land use issues within the town of Berthoud. Some decisions regarding things like the preliminary plats, conditional use permits, for example, are heard by both the town board and the Planning Commission. Some decisions like final plats rest solely with the Planning Commission. We have staff in attendance tonight thank you staff, to provide us with presentations on agenda items, answer our questions, and to work with the Planning Commission regarding the criteria for approval outlined in the municipal code. We also gain insight from the information and viewpoints that you in the audience provide. Your input is really not only appreciated but very welcomed. We're here to listen to and carefully consider all the relevant information for a public hearing listed on the agenda. If you wish to speak tonight, you will be recognized by me. When you come to the podium, please provide us with your name and address. Spell any uncommon names so that the record will accurately reflect your comments and your address. We ask that you keep your comments relevant to the land use matter being discussed, and we ask that you direct your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments. We understand that issues before us tonight are important to those involved, and feelings and emotions sometimes can run high depending on the particular issue we're talking about. We ask that you respectfully listen to everyone's presentations. You may or may not agree with them, but please don't interrupt with applause or other kinds of demonstrations. Please direct your comments to the planning commission, not the applicants or other speakers. Okay. First order on our agenda are the minutes from our April 27th meeting.
I'd like to call to order, Commissioner Anderson, that we need to do roll call.
Oh, okay, let's try that. Let's do that first. Thank you. Ms. Tobler, I appreciate that. Okay, let's go ahead and take the roll call.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Here.
Secretary Kurtz,
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Wing.
Here.
Commissioner Feldbush is not here this evening. And Commissioner Van Bethel.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so as I said, the next item on the agenda is the review and approval of our April 27th minutes. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about or change in those minutes? I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so let's turn to our, to item number 3 on our, I guess it's 3.1. I'm sorry, 4. Let's turn to item 4 on our agenda. That's the Bader Farm First Amendment to the PUD. So staff will introduce this item, and Johnson, our Community Development Director, will introduce item number 4.
Thank you, Vice Chair Anderson and members of the Planning Commission. So tonight you will be hearing 3 items on one property. There will be 2 presentations. The first presentation is going to cover 2 of the agenda items. The last presentation then will cover the final agenda item. And the reason why we're doing that is agenda item 4, the First Amendment to the PUD, and the First Amendment to a subdivision are the same parcel. If you recommend approval of those, then the next item would be a special use permit on one of the parcels. So that's why the first 2 deal with 2, the last one deals with one of the parcels. And so we will go ahead with the staff presentation. I will come up there, that will be easier.
Okay. Sorry, that's okay.
Alrighty. Okay, so again, this particular application is for a property located on the south side of 287 and on the west side of North Berthoud Parkway. Again, you're going to hear 2 items. And then this, for you all as planning commissioners and as staff, we walk through this process quite often, but for individuals that are in the audience that might not be familiar with this, I'd like to just give a quick moment to talk about where we are. So there are 4 stages to the land use process. The first is a pre-application meeting where applicants come in, they have discussions with various staff, whether it be operations, engineering, planning staff, to talk about the pros and cons of doing the development. We have that detailed technical review committee meeting. Staff provides input and direction, and then the application materials then from the applicant's perspective are prepared in accordance with the guidance that we're giving them. Then when the application is submitted, then the application materials are received, we go through everything. At that point in time, we're looking for, is there a document that's called traffic impact study? We're not looking at the details of the content at that moment in time. We're just making sure that they, submitted everything on the checklist. Then we do that's the completeness review. Then we'll send the materials out for referral. So individuals like the fire district, the school district, our water and wastewater team, our parks team, everybody is looking at these materials, and that's when the detail review happens. Staff reviews, the referral agency reviews, we'll take a look at those referral comments, and then we'll send out that first set of our staff report. Then, once the application materials are ready to come to a public hearing, sometimes folks go through 2, 3, 4, we have some that are in 6, 7 review process to make sure that the application is really scrubbed and ready to go. Then we'll schedule the hearings and public notice is made, signs are posted, it's in the papers, affected property owners get a notice in the mail as well. Then here we are tonight at the public hearing. So staff is going to give a presentation, then the applicant will give their presentation, and then the chair will open up the public comments. And we'll take public testimony for those that are in favor or against the proposal. And then that public comment period or the public hearing will be closed. And then the applicant has that opportunity to come up and share information that might have been brought up during the public testimony phase. And then you all deliberate, have discussion, and vote. And then post-approval, there may be conditions of approval, documents are signed, it's then recorded, and then from a planning perspective, we make sure the records and all the documents are filed correctly, and then we head into that construction phase. So again, this is where we are tonight at that third phase. And so depending on your decisions tonight, staff has recommended approval. You review our approval, take public testimony. You either send a motion for approval or a motion for denial to the Town Board of Trustees. They are that next step, and that will be a public hearing as well. And at that point in time, regardless of how staff recommends, we then represent you as the planning commissioner at that hearing. So we take your comments to the Town Board of Trustees. So tonight, again, the staff presentation, the applicant's presentation, the public hearing, pros and cons, important information for you all to consider, and then discussion and voting. So at this point in time, Lauren Richardson is a member of the Baseline team, and they are our planning department arm at this moment in time. She's going to come up and walk through these different applications. But Commissioner Kurtz, did you have something that you needed to ask?
Not at this moment.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to forget that.
Yeah, no, I
Okay,
appreciate that.
thank you. All right, Lauren.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you, Ann. Let's see. All right. So as Ann mentioned, tonight we're going to go through 2 applications about this property. Before I do that, I wanted to go over sort of an intro to the site. So this picture is an aerial image from Google Earth of the property, so you can kind of see what's around the property. You've got the Hammond neighborhood to the south, the Poudre Valley REA to the south, and bounded by Highway 287 and Berthoud Parkway. We've got the surrounding zoning here, so you can see how we've got the PUD to the east, to the south, R1 to the south as well, C2 to the north, and then Ag and R3 to the northwest. Okay, so this photo is also from Google Earth, and it shows that is a vacant property currently. We're looking west. And this one shows the existing access point for the Poudre Valley REA station right there. And then going actually across the road to the east, that access road keeps on going. Not sure what it's called, but it continues. All right, so a little knowledge about this site. The applicant is BCM Management Partners, LLC. We have 2 representatives here tonight to answer any questions. The site is currently part of a PUD, or a planned unit development, approved in 2007. It's called Bader Farm. The site
is 7.44 acres. And the first application I'll discuss is the PUD amendment, as Ann said. The request by the applicant being an ODP or Overall Development Plan Amendment and FDP, Final Development Plan Amendment, to modify allowed land uses. Along with the PUD amendment is a minor subdivision application, which proposes splitting the parcel into 2 lots, and as Ann mentioned, a conditional use permit for a proposed storage facility that is proposed on lot 1. All right, since the PUD process is kind of confusing, I always like to lay it out. So there's 3 steps really of the PUD process: the overall development plan or ODP, preliminary development plan or PDP, and final development plan or FDP. So I've included the acronyms as well because I will be using those or referring to those often. For this project, there is an existing ODP which requires an amendment. The applicant was also required to submit an FDP amendment which includes more details than the ODP and required other submittal items. All right. So the top part of this is a little snapshot of the permitted uses from the original overall development plan approved in 2007. And as you can see, this site is on the overall development plan is called Parcel 7. So these are the uses that were approved. Its intended use is commercial. The uses allowed by right include office and retail uses. The permitted within the C2 zoning. Uses allowed by right include household and commercial mini storage facilities. The amendment to this ODP proposes adding government facilities as permitted under the location and extent, process, or similar, i.e. fire stations. And I have highlighted that right there. That's the change. That's the main change. Okay. All right, included in the PUD amendment, both FDP and ODP, are proposed zone district standards. The proposed parcel 1 and parcel 2 have front setbacks of 20, side setbacks of 20 feet, rear setbacks of 20 feet, and a maximum building height of 40 feet. In comparison over here, you can see the suburban commercial district, which this site is currently identified as in, that has setbacks of 10 feet, 10 feet, and 10 feet. Just as a little comparison. All right. So the applicant submitted both an amended ODP and FDP to ensure both steps of the PUD are followed. Since this was an amended PUD and not creating a new PUD, a PDP step wasn't required. We were going to skip to the final and include all that stuff. Because the FDP shows more detail, it requires a drainage report and a final subdivision plat, which were all submitted by the applicant and reviewed by all town staff. All right. As mentioned in the staff report, the Town of Berthoud Code does not include review criteria for a PUD anymore. So therefore, we've used the final plat criteria to review, since final plats and PUDs require similar submittal items. The review criteria listed here were used to review the PUD amendment, which includes the ODP and the FDP amendment. Staff found that the application did fulfill the first review criteria and did not drastically change the proposed plat or allowed density. It is in conformance with this code and doesn't have significant changes to street alignments, access points, or public improvements. The proposed PUD amendment is in conformance with the previously approved Bader ODP in 2007. The second criterion was fulfilled as it does not propose changes that would contradict the Port Plan or the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Plan or the Berthoud Trails Master Plan. And the third criterion has been met. The town's Public Works Department and town engineers have reviewed the application and found no conflicts. And therefore, Staff recommends Planning Commission make a motion to recommend approval of the Bader Farm Amendment Number 1, PUD amendment to the town board. And you can find the motions on the slide. The suggested motions are proposed. Thank you. And since we were gonna do 2, should I just go on to the subdivision part and then they can, okay, all right. All right. As I mentioned, it also included a minor subdivision to the property. The application has the same applicant and property owners. They wish to divide the property into 2 lots. Right here. So this slide shows the 2 lots. Lot 1 is proposed to be 5.73 acres, and lot 2 is proposed to be 1.72 acres in size. It isn't the intent of the applicant to sell lot 2 to the Berthoud Fire Protection District. All right. Here's a little information about the subdivision. The minor subdivision includes a single access point, the bottom red arrow, so we can see, that will serve both parcels. If the fire station is built on lot 2, an additional site plan application, I believe, will be required, and access will be part of that review. Okay. The review criteria for a minor subdivision are basically making sure the application is in compliance with the code, the town comprehensive plan, and the port plan. This application has met this requirement. Both proposed lots are at least 50 feet wide, similar to the required minimum lot width for standard commercial zone districts in town. The second review criterion is the Planning Commission shall also consider how the applicant addressed comments received from the public during the public comment portion of the process when considering this request. And the applicant is here to answer any questions. All right, staff recommends Planning Commission make a motion to approve the applicant's request of the minor subdivision. And once again, those are the proposed motions on the slide. Thank you. Should I put that slide back up?
Okay, Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff at this point?
I do. Would you go back a slide, please, and I'll just, one more? So here, if you look at this, it says lot 1, and this is just a technicality, I'm just curious.
Yes.
It says 5.73 acres in lot 1 right below that. And then over here it says lot 1 is 5.1 acres. That's almost a half an acre difference, is
Oh,
it?
yes, that is a typo. I apologize. It is 5.73.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
5,
that's-
now, and then it looks like
Yes.
that space went to the other one. So lot 2 went from 1.7 to 2.3.
Yes,
So that also
is
should
also-
be 1.7.
correct.
Okay,
My
and then on
apologies.
this same slide, where the bold letters are Bader Farm subdivision total,
Yes.
is that the electrical, is that an easement on that? Is that what's in that space? That
Um,
picture we saw?
No, actually, and this will be, well, actually, it's covered in the PUD amendment as well. It's a drainage pond, or detention pond. So there's,
So again, if it's easy to do a picture, could you scroll
Sure.
back to where it shows that? I don't,
yes.
it looks like some kind of, electrical station.
Yes,
I think there's
so-
one more, maybe, or
One
two?
more?
There.
Oh, that is actually to the south.
So that's out of scope of this space we're looking at.
Correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And thank you for catching those.
I do have kind of just a general question. We don't see the PUD process very much, so thank you for providing kind of an overview. Normally, we see us moving from a PUD to looking at our place types and our comp plan, and then we get rezoning requests, right? So I was just wondering if there was a particular reason why we're not rezoning and sticking with the PUD.
Well, I can say that this project was started last year. So there were previous staff planners who began the process.
Okay.
So I'm not sure I can speak for them. Maybe Anne has some more insight into that. But that was the process that was started. Anne, do you have?
Yeah,
Yeah, the applicant was not requested to change the zone since the uses that were allowed in that PUD are similar to the uses that are going to be proposed. And because there's only 2 lots, I can only guess that previous staff said, well, the use proposed on the westernmost lot is in adherence to the PUD, and the change to the PUD would allow that public facility. And so if that is approved, since the result is only 2 lots, that they would be in adherence to that PUD, and it would, just changing the zone to allow those 2 uses would be one more process that could be achieved by just amending the PUD. And it's, I don't have the history, there wasn't a clear history provided in the file to why staff asked them to do a certain route.
Sure.
But once Baseline was on board and once the new staff came on board, we really didn't want to tell the apps it needed the ODP and it was just very confusing, but I think the way Lauren has presented this and gone through that process, it even clarified it in my mind too.
You did a nice job.
Thank you.
And then maybe I could just ask a clarifying questions too, so about what, since we're combining 4 and 5 in kind of this discussion. So agenda item 4, which is the amendment, the kind of in layman terms, that's just adding the government facility use to that PUD. And then agenda item 5, that's just the split for the minor subdivision.
Basically,
Okay, I just wanted, yeah.
yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, any other questions for staff at this point? Great, thank you. The applicant, do you have comments to provide?
No.
No comments from the applicant? Okay. With that, I'd like to open for public testimony. Open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to testify from the public tonight? 5 more seconds. Going. Okay, then I will close the public hearing. Okay, so commissioners, discussions, questions?
I have a couple more questions. I think, and this just kind of clarify for me. This may be early in the process, but since we're in this sort of weird sort of PUD, not really PUD world, will this development, it looks like that current access to the substation is sort of straddles the property line. Does that, I'm assuming that all gets sort of improved if and when kind of the property gets developed. Figured as much, but thought I'd ask the question. Is there anything happening west of there, or is that entire, like you've got the fire department or that the parcel 2 and parcel 1, whatever they're called? You have that the parcel to the east, the parcel to the west, the big long sliver, and we've got kind of a building lot. We're gonna talk a little bit about that here in a second. I know that's architecture, but I'm an architect and so I go there. Is there anything that happens west of there that we're considering? Is it all kind of part of the same sort of amendment and stuff at this point?
It's all part of this same, so.
Can you state your name and
Michael Cleary with Strategic Site Designs. We're the civil firm assisting them with this process. And that access does straddle the line, and there we have presented an easement with the PBREA group to construct that shared access that will be used by them to the south. And then a access easement is also included in our submittal for the fire department in the future to be able to use that same access and then access their parcel from the south.
I can pull up a map.
Okay.
So it's,
yeah, if you could point that out in the map, I think that would be helpful for
I
us.
wonder, can I zoom in on this?
It's like the bottom. It's the bottom. Well, the access is on the bottom right
Right.
on this plan. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the access will actually be wider than this hatched area depicted. And then
Oh, it's in an easement.
this here, I see a mouse on mine, but not yours. The hatched area to the south, that runs north and south, is the access easement for the fire department.
Would you say that again? Could you,
There is the 30-foot hatched sort of in the southwest corner of Lot 2, is an easement being granted for access, for the fire department to access, use the proposed entry from Berthoud Parkway and then be able to travel north into their lot.
so they would go directly from their lot onto Berthoud Parkway?
Well, that'll be part of their site plan, submittal and review, but this does, there you go.
There we go.
This gives them access that isn't directly to Berthoud Parkway.
And that gives standoff distance from the intersection.
And then they may or may not, I would assume they're gonna present something that has, limited exclusive access directly to Berthoud Parkway only for, emergency vehicle operations.
So there'll ultimately then be two ways to access the fire station. One that would be directly to Berthoud Parkway.
Maybe.
We're not there
Yeah.
yet.
Okay.
Okay.
I think over time, there may have been a couple iterations of this map, and that top, is that a road right up on the top?
That is a that's a public utility easement.
Okay. Thank you.
One other just clarification for staff, in terms of like kind of moving forward, is like zoning and architecture and design guidelines, is that baked in the PUD? Or does that revert, just so I kind of have a sense of kind of where this goes? Does it revert back to kind of our straight zoning that we have now, or do you know?
Right, so the architecture, the nice thing about the Berthoud Land Use Code is that there is a design section. And all development has to meet all of those elements in the design section regardless of zoning. And so the next item on the agenda will give you a glimpse of some architectural details. But when an applicant submits their application for building permit, that's when the architectural details are then
Right.
triple or quadruple checked.
Right.
But at this point in time, the architectural details, the sign details are looked at that special use permit process.
Okay.
And likewise, when the fire protection district comes forward, they'll be doing it through, special use permit process for self-storage next on the agenda. Site plan is an administrative process, and the fire protection district will work with them on those architectural details, landscaping, access, all of those items as well.
Okay, so we don't need to hash through that stuff as part of a PUD, okay?
No.
And then we also sort of, we can then sort of anticipate what happens after it kind of leaves this session tonight, okay?
Yep, so right now, there are two agenda items right now. One is that change to the PUD to allow a public facility to be a site plan. That's the only change.
Right.
And then the next one is then subdividing that parcel into two.
Okay.
And so that's what we're doing right now. And then next, we'll probably, you'll have some good questions regarding architectural
Right.
details.
Yeah, sorry to take us a little bit off target, I just kind of wanted to make sure I had my head square where we were.
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
I had some more questions.
Any other questions?
I have one question, and Lauren, would it be possible to pull up the first motion? Yes. Well, maybe, I'm trying to remember if there was a slide that said something about addressing public comments in the process. Do you remember
Yes,
what I'm talking
that,
about?
yes,
Okay.
that is the second criterion for minor subdivision.
Oh, okay.
So
All right, great, thank you.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering if there were public comments that were specific to this aspect of the amendment.
So there were no public comments received regarding the PUD amendment or the minor subdivision.
Right.
The applicant though did have, did you wanna talk about your public outreach that you did?
Yeah, we did, at the recommendation of Lauren, host a public neighborhood meeting where we presented the materials that you'll see here shortly, and gave notice to all those residents and businesses within 300 feet, was it, Lauren?
Yep, 300 feet.
And one resident showed up, plan showed up, and then a couple others, because it was in a public space, kind of wandered in. And their interest was simply to learn about the project. No one showed up to express their support or opposition.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any more questions for the applicant? I guess he's,
No, no, I think we're good. I'm good.
okay.
There, if I'm in the same universe of what you were just saying, there were some comments that we were provided that commented on a potential crime being associated with this, and that was stated a couple times, so.
Yeah, and I think that the reason I was asking for clarification was maybe we'll address that in the next
Yeah,
presentation.
yeah,
That'll be the
that's-
next part of our
Okay.
next discussion.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's interesting.
any other questions for discussion on, first on items 4 and 5? At this point,
Don't have any other questions.
thank you. Can I entertain a motion?
Sure, I'll move to forward a motion of approval of the Bader Farm PUD amendment number 1 to the Town Board of Trustees due to the findings in the staff report, including compliance with land use code, criteria for approval found in section 30-6-108.c, and the comprehensive plan.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Aye.
With a public
Oh, we
hearing,
have to have a
need
roll
do
call, sorry.
roll call, please.
Sorry about that.
Are you, okay, Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Van Botham?
Yes.
Commissioner Wing?
Yes.
Secretary Kurtz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes. Now, I would entertain a motion on the item number 5 as well.
I'll move to forward a motion to approve the Bader Farm minor subdivision amendment 1 to the Town Board of Trustees due to the findings in the staff report, including compliance with the land use code, the criteria for approval found in section 30-6-109.c, and the comprehensive plan.
Do I have a second? Second?
Yep, I'll
Thank
second.
All, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Secretary Kurtz?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Wing?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Botham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Unanimously. All right. Well, let's now move then to the 6th item on our agenda, the Berthoud Self-Storage Special Use Permit. At this point, we would ask staff to make a presentation. Looks like Lauren, you're up again, right?
That's right.
Yep, and rather go through those introductory slides, we'll just go into Lauren's slides.
Thank
You can always go back too.
Totally okay.
I know they're riveting and
appreciate 'em,
very
but
exciting.
No, I appreciate them once, I mean.
Yes.
A year.
Which is 5.73 acres in size. The request is for approval of a conditional use permit for a commercial indoor mini storage facility. So this slide shows the overall site plan of the property for Best Box Storage facility. So you can see here how we've got the detention area in that space that you had mentioned before. That's what that is. Okay. So the comprehensive plan and the future land use map identify this area as suburban business, place type character district. The preferred land uses for this character district include retail stores, lodging, services, restaurants, and offices. Moderate or low to moderate intensity is preferred. The general scale recommended is up to 3 stories. One area the conditional use permit looks at is parking. So due to the nature of the use and the majority of the parking is actually located inside the building. The intent of the use is to drive into the access of the building. Here, I'll get that little pointer thing again. This guy. Oops. Yeah, these two right here. So there's an access here and an access here. All right, those are two drive lanes on either side, and as you can see, there are storage units on either side that can be accessed from those two lanes. There are 8 exterior parking spaces and 1 is ADA van accessible, which does meet code. All right, here's a rendering that they created of the outside of the building, so you can kind of see the proposed architecture and some parking, the external parking, even some of the landscape buffer that is proposed on the southern border of the property. All right, the facility is planned to be 3 stories, all 100% climate controlled facility. Leasable storage area is approximately 83,000 square feet and plus or minus 830 units. The site plan places the building at its closest dimension, right here, to the southern boundary at 65 feet. The recommended setback for standard C2 zone districts is 35 feet from a residential zoning district, so it's more. Right. Here we have the whole landscape plan, and per section 30-2-114, the applicant has included an evergreen berm/buffer. It's identified in green down there along the southern border next to the Hammond neighborhood. And then due to an existing utility easement, which is the yellow line, it's just a water line that goes through there. You can't plant trees or shrubs on, large things on top of that. So the landscape buffer begins 25 feet north of their own property line. So it's given a fair amount of space. Okay. Here's another landscape rendering that they provided, and as you can see, we've got that nice evergreen buffer. And there will be other landscaping, it's just not shown here. The focus was primarily on the buffer, so. All right. The conditional use permit has 7 criteria that the applicant must satisfy. The first has been satisfied as it conforms to the code. Commercial zone districts permit many storage, but only with the approval of a conditional use permit. No variance is requested. Engineering and infrastructure standards were used in the design and were reviewed by staff. The second requires the applicant to conform to the comprehensive plan. The proposed structure fits the recommended 3-story building scale consistent with this character district. The applicant followed the architectural guidelines, as Anne mentioned earlier. They have also added a 6-foot sidewalk along the frontage of Lot 1, and I can go back to that slide if needed, in order to conform to the Berthoud Trails Master Plan. The third has been satisfied as the use will be adequately served by public utilities. The majority of the landscaped and open space area are considered low hydrozone areas, meaning they'll require low amounts of water. The fourth is consistent with the comp plan and the future land use map. As I mentioned earlier, they have included that landscape buffer. The fifth criterion has been satisfied since traffic will not have a significant adverse impact on the adjacent uses or result in hazardous conditions. The paved drive aisle is large enough for 2-way traffic and emergency vehicles. The vehicle access is limited internally, the internal loading areas. They'll be secured by an access pad and limited to customers only. Okay. And The sixth criterion has been satisfied with the necessary landscape buffer and the location of the building with the setbacks. The facility's daily operations will not produce substantial noise. Operating hours are from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I've been told there will be a 24-hour video monitoring system, and 25 security cameras, and as well as an on-site facility manager and district manager. The applicant has chosen light fixtures that meet the international dark sky standards, and the submitted photometric plan shows no light trespass onto neighboring properties. The final, seventh criterion has been satisfied. The applicant is aware that all applicable permits will need to be submitted to the town of Berthoud prior to construction. Staff recommends Planning Commission make a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit to the town board. And the proposed motions are on the screen there. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Lauren?
I have a question. I've never been in one of those buildings, obviously seen them all over the place, but when you drive in, you have access onto ground level.
Yes.
How do you get your stuff on the third level? Are there elevators or do the ramps actually go up second and third floor?
No,
Elevators.
I just wrote down that question.
Yeah, we'll get you
Why is
station
it like
names.
relates to parking? Because like obviously you don't need parking if you're a first floor tenant, but what if?
Yeah, so so the way we design
Could you
facility.
state your name, please?
Oh,
and your
Bo
affiliation?
Reinberg, and I'm with BCM Management Partners, I'm one of the owners.
Thank you.
So a drive-through facility like this has specific loading areas for elevator access that have a wide area for someone to kind of pull to the side, and then elevator takes them to the second and third floor. The way we design our facilities, no unit has a longer travel distance than 150 feet. We found that if you go past 150 feet, even if it's off an elevator, customers start to get fatigued.
Some storage places have like garage doors, you can actually put cars in them. Are any of your units that big in this? I mean, like on the first floor, could they accommodate a vehicle?
Probably, I guess depending on the size of vehicle, I mean, we've had customers put, an antique, like a MG or something, like a
Sure.
really small.
So the units are smaller on the second and third floor, I would assume.
Usually, the way you usually do it is larger units on the first floor and then they get a little bit smaller,
Sure.
but our average size unit in this facility is 110 square feet. It's everything from a 5x5, which is 25 square feet, up to the largest unit that we have in the building is a 10x30, which is 300 square feet. On a 10x30, your door is 8 feet wide and about 8.5 feet tall. So that gives you an idea of kind of clearance. And the door sizes are the same throughout the facility, with the exception of a smaller 5x5 unit would have a 3.5 foot door. So, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? And we'll ask the applicant if he wants to come back up and make more comments.
I did have a question about the landscape buffer.
Yes.
It might be able to go back to that. So, it looks like there's kind of a break in the buffer. I don't know if that's just how this
Yeah.
is drawn, but it also is coincident with the closest corner, so kind of
yes.
unfortunate from a buffering standpoint that that's the spot that part of the neighborhood would see most. But is the intent to have a continuous buffer, or is that truly a break that can't be accommodated because of the road and everything like that?
I'm sure they did consider all the different ways to increase that buffer, but with the size of the road and everything, and then respect to the easements, because this property does have quite a few easements on it. That is sort of just where the best option landed. And as far as that little squiggly line, that is because what was provided to us were larger versions so that we could, inspect which trees were going in, what shrubs, all that kind of stuff. And just for your viewing, I tried to stitch them together to show you the whole thing. So that's what that little line is.
Okay. I didn't even catch that, but
Yeah.
now I get what you're saying, okay.
Yep.
I have a question about that too, and it's,
Yes.
is the buffer something that's a requirement? And or
For,
do we need to add that as a condition to granting the special use permit?
well, actually, it is already a requirement for, commercial and industrial properties that are adjacent to residential properties, which is why, we asked them to fulfill that. And it does specify evergreen, so there are quite a few evergreens.
My other question then would be about the monitoring. Is the security and the monitoring something that is also a requirement, or is that something we would have to, if we wanted to make sure that happened, we'd have to add as a condition?
No, it is not a requirement. They mentioned that in the narrative, and I thought it was pertinent because we had some concern over crime.
Which is why I'm asking.
From the public, so I thought that was, kind of answered some of those questions.
So one of those comments talked about razor wire, so I was gonna compliment what a really aesthetically attractive building it is, quite frankly. And then I just popped into my head that it's got razor wire around it. Could you comment on that? I mean, is
I'll have to have that comment on that.
Yeah, we don't use razor wire. Really, safety and security are absolutely critical for our business. I mean, this is a large building. It's not an inexpensive building, and we provide a Class A product. I mean, there's really nothing like this in this market. There may be a few in Denver that are drive-through facilities, but this is a real Class A facility. And the only way you can stay Class A in this business is by having the best security possible. Self-storage, there's kind of two types. There's the traditional type that had razor wire and was built on the outskirts of town and has gravel and chain link fence. This is what's considered kind of the 5th generation Class A self-storage that's much more commercial and retail in nature and really appeals to the whole spectrum of consumers. So.
And if I may, Commissioner, Vice Chair Anderson, if I may address Commissioner Wing, concertina wire, razor wire is not an allowed fence material in the town.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So is there any fence at all surrounding the property?
No.
Okay, just for my understanding.
Because there's the only access to the facility itself is through the drive-through of the doors in the front. So we don't, sometimes when you have a facility like this, then you put fences around it, then you put that doesn't portray a safe, secure facility. It portrays something you're concerned about. I mean, I think it speaks to the fact that the fire district wants to be in front of our building. We really complement each other very well because we are such a low traffic generator and they really obviously can't afford to have to worry about someone else's traffic when they need to do what they need to do. And so these uses really go together well. The use also acts as a tremendous buffer to the density and the impact of the high traffic areas at that intersection with the residential. So there's a number of instances across the country where we've developed parcels that are between heavier, higher intensity, either retail uses or traffic or stop intersections like this and residential because we block the noise, the light, just the general aesthetics of traffic because we're a low impact amenity.
I was saying, let me ask commissioners, do you have any more questions of staff? And then we can ask the applicant to comment and answer questions.
I don't think so.
Do you have any more questions of staff? Okay, so do you have anything that you'd like to tell us about this, or and would you entertain any other questions?
Yeah, first off, I want to thank staff and everyone for the process. It really they've been tremendous to work with. I think it's been thorough. I think we've certainly taken feedback and tried to be accommodating to the goals of staff and the code and it's really important for us. Our business is 1 mile or 3 miles from our facility, so working with the staff and the community to make sure that it's something that really looks good and provides a service that's needed is really important for us. And it starts at the application process. So processes like this, you know, we always want them to go a little quicker, but that we'd rather at the end have a really good product, and a lot of times we make adjustments based upon what we hear from staff, and they're in the community that we're looking to serve. So, you know, a self-storage use is not the most exciting use. Trust me, I never walk into a planning department and get like a standing ovation. So when you said no applause from the crowd, I was a little disappointed. I thought maybe I'd get some applause, but I don't, unfortunately. But the use, even prior to COVID, 1 in 10 households utilize self-storage, almost 10% of the population. That usage has climbed to over 13%. Post-COVID, you have a lot of restructuring of households to create a home office. You have kids moving in and out. You have work from home. You know, you may work in the city 2 days a week, but you work from home 3 days a week. There's just a change in lifestyle, right? That is on top of the fact that our three main drivers, which aren't real positive to say, are death, divorce, and displacement. Those are the things. Those are kind of the core foundation of our consumer. And so, you know, it's an amenity that neighborhoods and communities require because of the nature of growing and the nature of moving into different households. And we really feel like what was missing here was a real Class A type facility. There's other facilities in the proximity, and even as you go north up to Loveland, but they're not a Class A facility. They're not climate controlled. They're more traditional in nature. Which certainly serve a certain segment, but we felt like the gap in the community here was a Class A product that really serves the entire spectrum of the consumer. So we're excited about the opportunity. I mean, when we were approached by the fire district about this being, you know, a location that they had identified, we really felt like it was a perfect fit because, quite frankly, we weren't sure what we were going to do with that front section. We didn't like just having emptiness there. I mean, we talked about a number of different things, and when the fire district approached us, it really is kind of a perfect match for their needs long term and our needs. I think it only enhances certainly safety and security, and again, with our low impact and low traffic generation, it just works together very well. So.
Any questions of our applicant?
Very good. I do have a question just about operations. So there was a mention of it being 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So if you flip that around, could you say, is that to say like people aren't allowed in there between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.?
That's right. Yeah, so every customer gets a key code.
Yeah.
And that key code works, and we have apps. I mean, it's not only a key code now, but it works after 6 a.m. and before 10 p.m.
So it's 100% self-service, right?
Well, we'll have a manager in the office. Yeah,
At the facility?
at the facility. There's a manager at the facility. Those hours are not 6 to 10. The managers in the facility usually 10 to 5, and then on Saturdays they may adjust those hours just based upon moving and customer flow.
But even a paying customer can't show up at 2 a.m.
No.
and get in.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I guess another question, and you know, so we're a public commission, right? And so we receive public comment, and we've done a lot of
Sure.
discussion on safety. Could you talk a little bit about maybe the difference, but a little bit more about, I don't know if you have any statistics, but like the nature of this Class A product versus, say, another type of self-storage product that might have more safety concerns or security concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak just firsthand. I've been in self-storage since 2007 and owned and developed over 20 facilities across the country. Everything from traditional to and traditional meaning kind of that first class that we talked about, and all the way to Class A facilities. My experience is that 9 out of 10 security issues are a dispute between a husband and wife. To be completely honest with you, it's in the middle of a divorce. Someone doesn't want them into their unit. A unit gets broken into, and it was because the husband had the code, the wife had the code. That was the dispute. I mean, I can't think of more than 5 occasions where We've had unauthorized access past 10 PM, you know, it's someone who stuck around too long, we saw them on the camera. We have music, I mean, another thing that we do, we have music in the facility to keep it from feeling just kind of empty, and when you're walking around a storage facility at 8 o'clock at night, you hear everything, the doors, it's just, you know, you want it to feel secure. And so that music is important to just kind of keep someone from maybe getting a little bit too comfortable, right? So the last thing I'll say is that the demographics of your surroundings certainly impact the security of your facility. So we have very urban facilities in other markets that are surrounded by a different kind of socioeconomic class. That's a much that's a much more high touch customer base where your manager stays all the way till 10 o'clock, and you just approach that a little bit differently. So I know this, you know, the security aspect, certainly outskirts of town, chain link or no fence or no gate lends itself to issues, right? I mean, it's just the poor lighting, those types of things. But of our facilities that are climate controlled Class A secured access, in the past 15 years, we've had 2 break-ins.
2 burglaries.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about the actual security system itself and like who monitors it? Is it 24-hour monitoring and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, we use a very sophisticated camera system that really camera systems with AI and things are improving literally. By the time you buy one, they've got a new system that's out. But as soon as a camera gets triggered past 10 o'clock, that identifies the individual based upon their code, their access. Do we have a picture of their ID, which we require that for move-in. And so if a customer triggers a camera through their code and then that code hasn't been triggered to exit the facility, that's gonna send a notice out to the facility manager and the district manager that says you have someone in the facility past 10 o'clock. That notifies so that we can call the person, we'll look up right away who they are, call them what's going on, again, safety and security are really important for our business. I mean, we really spare no expense when it comes to making sure that customers always feel safe. Because one customer who doesn't feel safe or has an event that's less than positive can really, really hurt your business.
So is there external monitoring too around the building so that
Mhm.
someone, okay.
Yep.
That's a question, I'm not sure it's for you or for staff. Did you mention that this was an administrative review from here forward, site plan review?
That's a great question. No, this one goes through the public hearing process.
Okay.
The fire protection district would be an administrative review.
Got it, okay, so that's what I heard. So I guess what I had some comments, some questions and moreover, I think some comments about some of the site stuff that looks sort of done.
Mhm.
And I wondered whether it made sense for us to sort of ask questions and talk a little bit through that, just to get it on the record or whatever.
Yep.
I guess I'll launch on my diatribe if that's okay. As a use, I like that it's complementary to the fire station.
Mhm.
I like that it's storage and it's right off the highway and everything like that. I mean, there's a lot to this usage that I think makes sense. There's issues with it that I sort of struggle with. It's a big box on a big flat site with a road around it. And this is like one of our main entries into town. It's one of our main entry points. So I see that there's been a lot of attention kind of put to landscaping. But I feel like there's something around grading or something that we could consider as the site plan moves forward. I mean, the building's a good looking building, I know, and again, I commend you for the work on the building, and I know we've got codes and stuff. I just feel like this is an important place for us to make sure that we're being really careful, that it looks nice. It's a 3-story box, right, in a big flat site, so, and I know that's sort of like the nature of the building. I it's compounded unfortunately by the fact that it sort of pinches against 287 and kind of against the residential area. So we may have limitations in terms of landscape buffer, but there may be trade-offs with hardscape buffer, boulders. I don't know the answer, but I sort of feel like I would like to see some like.
Well, and I think
Take the
the
time to think through that.
topography too it really isn't a flat, I mean, there's, and Mike, you might be able to.
Yeah, it's hard to convey in two dimensions, but the site does slope from east up to the west. And so this site is actually cut into,
So it kind of comes
The
back down
slope.
again, okay.
and so the west side and the southwest corner are actually 6 to 7 feet below the
So it
the
almost
landscaping to the west.
two-story.
And, so particularly for the residential areas, that there's a buffer that is 6, 7 feet high, and then the trees.
Right,
And so from the south, it'll, I think it'll be pretty screened. And then it's cut in from 287. It's lower, not quite as, it's cut in, 3 or 4 feet.
right,
With the trees on top of the berm, so.
okay.
It's not quite just a box on a site, it's
Yeah.
more a box sort of cut into
Right.
a sloping site.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come off like I was throwing rocks, that's not what I meant, but like, you know what I mean?
You said
This-
boulders, not rocks, so.
Hardscape?
Yeah,
Hardscape, yeah.
big rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we wanna make sure that we're taking care of the site. I think the residents in some ways, they're gonna have a large building erected north of their house. And frankly, that'll screen them from some of the noise from 287. So there's some good takeaways from a usage standpoint. I just sort of feel like as a planning commission, we're trying to sort of care for the image of the community. And with this being one of our main entry points, I just really sort of encourage, like Class A facility, Class A sort of site development, and anything we can do to sort of mitigate some of those things that I would be happy with. Question on landscape establishment. Someone mentioned sort of low water landscape. Wondering about the landscape kind of around the building, that western sliver that's kind of left open, the buffer space. What's kind of the plan or the intent in terms of establishing that landscape over time?
So a professional landscape designer put this together, and that's part of the next step of the review. And so that set of plans has been reviewed for considerations like that. And the comments that we've gotten back have been made, those adjustments have been made. I'm not a landscape architect, so it's difficult for me to maybe speak too specifically. But I know all of the engineering and landscape comments that have come back have been addressed. You might speak a little more specifically to those. But
The other thing that I'll just say is, I mean, we're, a lot of times on sites like this, and really most of our sites, I mean, landscaping is at the end, and it's gotta look really, that has to look really good,
Right.
right? If you're gonna spend what we're spending on a project like this, we're just kind of refuse to cut corners when it comes to beautification of the area around us, especially at a prominent corner like this. So two things. One, we have seen, I know the fire district will have their full presentation and things after, when they're ready. But their renderings and things that we've seen are really, really good. I mean, it will look very nice and really fit in great for the community. Second thing is, from a landscaping perspective, as that process goes on, and we get out there, we say, I know that it showed this big open area, but to your point, we need to add some hills or so, you know what I mean? Like, we're always open for that type of feedback and understanding from the community. Again, the more we can collaborate, the more we feel a part of the process, and it's coming from those that are our customers, or close to the building,
Sure.
so.
And I appreciate that. And I only bring it up just to kind of get it into the record. I know you guys have some work to do.
I think it's a great point, yeah.
So it's good, it's a good opportunity to get.
Because even with like, I know we talked about the lighting and, you know, without fail, we'll put a light up and it'll be the exact kind of light that we spec that, you know, is supposed to be face down and this,
Mhm.
but it'll hit a rock and it'll go right into some place that makes somebody, you know, so.
Right.
We'll talk to the resident and say, okay, we'll just turn the light, you know what I mean? So making modifications like that is being a good neighbor.
Mhm.
And we have to be a good neighbor because those are our customers.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And if I could, Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioner Van Bentham, there were a lot of site constraints on this property with the overhead high transmission overhead
Going into the
lines.
substation, yeah.
Right, and so there were several constraints then, and Lauren and the applicant actually worked with Poudre Valley REA to determine what could and couldn't go in that area.
Okay.
So we can ask her, Lauren to explain some of that as well. And then the applicant will be required to irrigate the landscaping, even the area that's more of an open field, even some of
The
the.
easement as well.
Yeah, they'll
Okay.
be required to irrigate to ensure it has success.
Okay.
And if we could go back maybe to the slide showing the building facade, I know that's more of a, like a rendering, it's not the architectural details, but to put your mind at ease, I mean, they'll have to have wall articulation, all of those things as well.
And I, before you do that, I wanted to thank you for that, because the graphic we're looking at right now has a green line and a yellow line. And it looks very much like you run the risk of having this sort of no man's land. But if you like remove the highlighter from there,
Oh,
it
yes.
becomes kind of like a single, essentially, I mean, if it's done well, it ends up being kind of an amenity for those residents, I would imagine. So
Well, and that
I
was-
just don't want a 30-foot wide easement that ends up being tumbleweed, you know?
I was gonna save my comment till the report by the staff, but John, I was totally thinking exactly what you are. This is probably one of the main corridors going into Berthoud, and and I'm just pontificating here a little bit, but you know, a monument going on there that talks about Berthoud, and I mean, are those within scope? Can those things be discussed or with staff and the developer?
You mean like asking them to install an art piece or something like that, or?
Well, the town funds it, but it's because it's such a visible spot right on 287, and it's the main corridor coming into our town. Just a beautiful, I mean, even almost like when you come in from the other direction and you hit the roundabouts, that's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, the flowers and landscaping and the name. This would be almost like a bookend to that on the other end.
I will say that when we first started this process, before the fire district approached us about this being a location for them, we did have some concepts of art kind of in that area. But quite frankly, when that fire district identified this as being really strategically a great location for them as they grow and serve the community, you know, that coupled with the high level of design that we've seen on their renderings, coupled with them as the Berthoud Fire Department, I mean, I think that what you're looking for, that may not solve all of it, but that is gonna be a really, really nice thing to see as you come into town. I mean, it really is it's gonna show very well, it's gonna be important for the community, certainly important for the fire district. And so I think we felt that same way about that front section, cause if you it's kind of hard to see here, but the front section had some challenges because of all the different, there's a giant easement that kind of runs,
Yeah, there's a,
so this, like, there's a giant easement that runs, that's
there's a sanitary sewer.
yeah, sanitary, that serves that entire commercial development over there. So you had this, I mean, it really had a lot of nuances to it. So we really spent a lot of time trying to find either a use or something for this section that the city and the community could feel good about. And when the fire district approached, it felt like that's a win-win,
Yeah,
you know?
and I don't wanna be like designing from this side, because obviously you guys are the professionals to do that. I felt like I wanted to make a couple of comments about what I feel is kind of important and same thing for this area, cause I know that there's additional work to do. So
And I'll say from our standpoint, we are completely on board with if the city, if somebody finds a great spot within this, that we can do something that really celebrates the city or helps, we are completely on board. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Well, let me ask kind of an odd question. In that sliver of ground, that would be to the west.
The Western Triangle.
Yeah.
And the
I
west is
wanna
straight
call it-
up, we've been talking directions all around, this thing has been a little funky, but on this page, if you went straight up, that's straight west, isn't it pretty close?
North.
That's north. Yeah.
I know.
Isn't that 287?
Yeah,
Two-
this
yeah.
is,
No.
this is the hook of 287.
Yeah,
It's where it
but isn't right
curves.
across from that, Huron Lakes, which is straight west?
This-
287's right,
No, this,
no,
this is
excuse me.
287.
287 is here.
Yeah,
And Berthoud Parkway
yeah.
is right here.
Look-
But 287 goes like this. We're right when it goes east.
So let me continue with my weird question here. In that sliver area, I don't know what we wanna call it, but
Top or bottom?
there, on the left
The
here,
triangle?
the triangle here.
Oh.
There wouldn't be any large signage, there wouldn't be anything on the north side that would have large signage or anything like that. It's not, nothing like that's being
Can I
planned
ask
or
a
considered.
follow-up question or just add on to your question?
No, there's nothing, we don't have anything planned in that area.
Go ahead, I have one more after you.
Well, I had also wondered, sometimes when I see these kinds of developments, they have like big bold letters on the side of the building. I'm just kind of wondering, I don't know if that would like fall under sign requirements for the town, but just kind of wondering if that was in the plans.
I mean, I don't know where we are from
In your
this.
picture, it looks like, and you can barely see it, that's right on the right corner. Cause I saw it, but it's not like in your face,
Oh, I
big
didn't notice that
neon
picture.
signs. Can you show the picture, the artist rendition of it?
Is it part of the,
Let's see. No, that was, yeah, okay.
I don't know if that's part of Lauren's slide deck or not.
Yeah, I have.
But we talked to the applicant about the dark sky, because sometimes when you put the big graphic words and signage on, that it actually doesn't comply with the dark sky.
Sure.
I mean, and I think in some of the feedback, we removed some signage. I don't wanna stand here and say I can't, like, we have to have a sign of some sort, people have to know where we are, we have to be, I mean, most of the times when you see storage facilities, people know them because of the doors. I mean, it is in the industry, it's the garage doors that tell people it's self-storage. We obviously don't have that here, and so signage at the front of the lot through a monument sign, something visible that tells people what we're doing there is important for us to be, I mean, ultimately, we're making a large investment in this facility, and so we can't have it so that nobody knows what we are.
Yeah, I
That-
think that's very reasonable. I was just kind of, yeah,
But
wondering
it's
to
not a
the point of,
Hollywood
like,
flashing like
Yeah,
picture of me pointing at something.
and
like
sometimes if
1-800
it's actually
storage.
on the building, I wasn't sure if that would actually make it a sign versus part of the building or whether, yeah.
And with Commissioner Smith, when a sign permit will be required, and we'll review that with compliance in the code as well. There's been a lot of discussion about landscaping along State Highway 287 and the entry feature. It would be within your realm if you wanted to recommend that the applicant provide greater landscaping in that area. That is definitely something you could recommend, that then they would amend that and bring it to the town board of trustees for their hearing. So if you see things that you would like to see enhanced because it would further complement what's in the land use code and the comprehensive plan, that is within, you can request that.
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, and I do think that may be something we want to consider in our discussion in a bit. the other thing I was wondering was, you mentioned something maybe either in the Slover area or whatever, that would be commemorative of Berthoud or public servants of Berthoud or whatever. I would love to see it be something about, let's say, our fire district and our firefighters, or in that area, something, since we are gonna have a fire station in that parcel, be really interesting to see something like that, or something that commemorates or the history of Berthoud or something like that. You have that open area, it'd be kind of,
And I'm totally on board for being creative and collaborative. One thing, just as a business person, probably our biggest competitor is right up the road, and their entire facility is based upon fire.
Trucks.
there you
So
go.
I really, as much as we're totally supportive of being collaborative, we
but they're
want
not
it to look.
Berthoud.
What's that? Yeah, I know, but I can't drive business, if someone's like, I'm looking for a big fire station, they're like, oh, I just go to that
Just
one.
go
So
there.
I guess I just wanted to mention that we are completely on board for working to find something that is appropriate, and certainly we have the ground that we can kind of provide as a palette, or as a landscape.
So I'm happy that and thank you for that you're willing to consider that, because
Yeah.
I do think that really would enhance the space, and anytime that we can show our appreciation for folks in Berthoud or something, I think if we can do that, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I totally agree too. I think that when we discuss, we can talk about what that would look like, but I think at this stage, maybe something general about like working with the town on public art, and I don't know if there's a public art easement, if we can even afford to put another easement on this parcel, but something like that. I have one, sorry, can I?
No,
I'm gonna
go ahead,
kind of
sure,
like,
go ahead.
I'm gonna, it's somewhat related to
Go ahead, say that.
landscaping, but I wanna talk about just kind of the vertical height of the building, and as it relates to, I guess they're not exactly adjacent, but across the street, we have one of our public parks with the reservoir. And so I'm trying to like visualize, like if you're at the reservoir, it has these amazing mountain views, like if this 3-story building would at all like kind of, it looks great, but
I get it.
your grading discussion kind of put me a little bit at ease if it's going to not sit up on the hill as much, it's gonna go.
Oh, yeah, no, it definitely, because we're building into the hill,
You're building into the hill.
because the grade changes there. I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing I think, let me screw up the slides. Let's see.
Is there a slide that shows the contours so that you can show?
Well, I guess the other thing to keep in mind is the distance between,
Yeah.
like, this is a big area,
Yeah.
right? So the front of our building is probably, I would think it's almost 500 yards from the other side of Berthoud Parkway, which then there's another 500 yards until you're in the park. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think by the distance that you're back from where
That reservoir is, yeah.
it's not gonna block any the mountain views.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know it wouldn't like cover up a mountain, but if it would just like kind of be awkward.
It will certainly be something there, yes.
Awkwardly protruding. like-
Trust me, it will look different than just what it looks like now. I totally appreciate that, but.
Yeah, so since you're kind of cutting into the hill, is there any kind of, I guess, reference point, like, so obviously the residential homes have a max 2-story height, so will you be a full story higher, will you be a half story higher, will you be 2 stories higher because you're kind of climbing this hill?
2 stories higher, well, the height,
I just mean from like the roof line of the like the 2-story residential, that's to the south.
yeah, so I guess the peak,
It's a 40-foot, building, flat roof building.
yeah, so the highest, so the,
Yeah, it's a 3-story building.
Right, I just trying to like put together all the.
yeah, so I mean, the peak of a 2-story house, we only had an architect here that could. Oh,
36 feet, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's over 30 feet, right? And so the top of our roof is
Would be
40 feet.
of a similar, yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't think I think from a massing perspective, it's not gonna look like you have a tiny house down here and a giant house over here. I mean,
Yeah.
it's far away, there's enough space, I think, that,
Yeah. Well, and I had another question about kind of, like you said, like if there's gonna be this building hovering over that portion of.
I mean, that's where I think too, it helps that
Yeah.
there's so much, you know, that with the detention in this area, the grass in this area, you know, from a massing perspective, it's not like we're wedging it onto a tiny parcel. You know what I mean? We've got a lot of space around it.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. I do have another question for staff, Ann, and this is what I was talking about earlier. So your predecessor, we don't get a lot of special uses or conditional uses that come across. And I remember at one point, we had a conditional use, and I'm not trying to equate your project to this, but generally speaking, they were warning us that conditional uses, when approved, set precedent that then future applicants of conditional uses can utilize, I guess. So I'm just wondering, is that real? And maybe if our attorney's on the line, she could help out with answering that. But it was just something that was in my memory because I just wanted to think a little bit further down the line.
And let me piggyback on that as a kind of a part of that question would be, if that is presidential, couldn't we make it a special use then for a certain period of time that is renewed? You know, within, you know, it could be a long period of time, but would there be a way to condition it that way so that it wouldn't look as if it was as presidential? I don't know. I have to ask Erin what she thinks about all that.
Yeah, so for all land uses in the town of Berthoud, they have to comply with our design and development standards, regardless of what they are. And so there are architectural details that will be reviewed at the time of building permit. There are landscape standards that are being reviewed now. There are, lighting standards. And so it doesn't matter if it's a conditional use, and conditional use and special use are the same thing in the Berthoud code.
Mhm.
So if it's a site plan, if it's a conditional use permit, if it's a subdivision, every land use activity, any development has to comply. So there is no difference in setting a precedent for the look and feel of the development, because it doesn't matter, it has to comply.
Okay, well, and I guess maybe that, to put it in like real terms, my question was specifically, so we're essentially we're asking to consider putting a conditional use for what's termed mini storage, right, on this parcel, which is on a PUD zoning, which doesn't really have any other kind of zoning, I guess, analog in our current zoning plan. So in the future, let's say somebody came on the east side of town and there was a C2 or an M1 zone, and they said, I would also like to put a mini storage facility, and that would still require conditional use under C1, C2, M1, M2, all that. But it wasn't, say, as good of a product, or we didn't agree with it. Does anything we do tonight set precedent that we would be, that essentially we could open ourselves up for that applicant, a future hypothetical applicant?
Erin, did you hear that question?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is no.
Okay.
And I think it's, it's a great question. It's what is always gonna be in the minds of, planning commissioners and the important role we play. But I would piggyback on Ann's, response to that as sort of the basic, reason why you're not gonna set a precedent. The uses that are allowed are the uses that are allowed, right? And if someone has the right to construct a storage facility, because it's allowed either as use by right or conditional use, then that really has already sort of essentially set the precedent, if you will. The policy makers, when they created the zoning, really put in place what established the precedent. And I hope that answers your question, and if it doesn't, please.
No, it does, and I hate to kind of take this up into like the stratosphere of like, thinking too long term, but it just, we were kind of cautioned in it previously, so I just wanna.
And I would just say my experience, and we've done projects in 8 different states and come into situations where our use is almost always a conditional use or a special use within commercial districts, right? So sometimes in industrial districts, it's not, but we don't really want our business in an industrial district. We want it in a commercial district. And so and I will say that we've never been successful in saying, well, 3 years ago, you let them do it here, so you should let us do it. I mean, that hasn't, in 15 years, hasn't worked for us. Now, I will say the ultimate solution is that you amend the zoning code to eliminate self-storage moving forward. And I have no objection to that. And I would be very supportive of a decision after we open to eliminate all self-storage. So I just, on the record, I don't wanna. I have to be genuine, I'm not gonna lie to you. I have no problem being the last one in.
Do we have any more questions for the applicant at this point?
I don't have any further questions.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, with that, we haven't had our public hearing yet, so let me open the public hearing for public testimony. Anyone in the audience have any comments, questions? You get 5 seconds to raise your hand and run up here to the podium.
And help me out here, sorry, I don't do these frequently, is this where I would present the renderings of our stuff, or would we wait?
Yes, if you would like to present your concepts in support of the, just the neighborhood, we would be happy to have you.
I have it here, so let's do that.
So when you, please provide us with your name and your affiliation, and we know that you're at the firehouse, so we don't need your address.
Yes, Lyle Fenderson, and I work for Berthoud Fire Protection District. So, I'm here in support of and representing the Fire Protection District. Chief Charles, as many of you may know, wasn't able to be here tonight, so we had these renderings. I don't know where's a good place to. Here, I can hold these or post them up somewhere, but
I'm good.
You guys may very well be aware, but we did do a station deployment study that identified this location as one of the best locations for the amount of growth and everything that's happening in the north end of town. So NFPA, their standards set for response times, and this location provides that for us for where we're seeing the majority of the growth in our community. And then also working with the applicant, it's provided us, it's attainable for us, the amount of land that we need, working out the deal and all that kind of stuff, so.
Is this incremental to the existing one?
Incremental to the existing station?
Yes.
No, this is a
Okay.
different rendering.
Will that one close?
No, I'm sorry, this is in addition to, this would be a station, a third station in our
Okay.
district. Right now, currently we have station 1 and
Station 4.
two. Yeah, this will be a third station. And just to.
Station 1 is no more.
So Loveland has a station 3 south of their district. And so this was to eliminate some confusion and station naming, that's all that was. We may see in the future Station 3 out close to the interstate, but that's further in the future. So, but anyways, I understand that this goes to an administration review, right? So I'm just here to present information and answer any questions to the best of my ability, so.
thank you for that. We appreciate you providing us.
And they were great too. They came to the, when we hosted the community, outreach within 300 feet, fire chief came and two other members of the district. So, no, we didn't have a great showing, but that's all right. It was certainly great to, kind of visit with them and be in we were at the new, athletics, or the rec center there. So, it was nice to have their support.
Thank you for presenting that. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
you.
we have the opportunity here. Thank you for all your service.
Well, thank you, appreciate that.
Great rendering.
Did you guys get to see everything you needed to here? I mean, is there, okay.
Well, can I ask you on timeline on that, or, I'm
No.
Fair enough.
That's just because I don't clearly have that information.
I'm sure there's all sorts of funding hurdles and stuff that you.
Yeah, so I can say that it is in the capital plan, I just, I don't have an exact timeline.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else from the public want to make any comments? If not, we'll close the public hearing and begin our discussion. We talked about a few suggestions for the board, possible conditions on the special use.
I thought the comment on adding some verbiage on the landscaping is very relevant to the spot you talked, to John, maybe even more than one. But,
I agree. My concern's a heavy word. I don't wanna be designing from here.
sure.
I wanna make sure that if we're putting any sort of, that's kind of why I wanted to enter into the record, and I completely spaced it and then public hearing, so I apologize for putting it in the wrong place. I kind of felt like I wanted to kind of get some stuff in the record, so as they continue to develop the site, that they're thinking about those things and looking for opportunities to do that. I'm concerned that it would be easy, heck, for me being the architect, and it would be easy for me to go out here and like make a bunch of like design decisions that I don't wanna do because I'm not the experts they are. So I'd be good for some language, but I wanna make sure that we're not overly specific or prescriptive.
Yeah. In the past, we've used, for stuff like that, it's more of like a direction for staff. And we say something like, continue to work with staff to
Right.
develop,
I'd be good with that.
landscaping, considering the focal point of this intersection for the town.
And
Or
that's-
something like, some general language like that, so it's
I'd be
in the
good with that.
record.
Yeah, I'd be good with that.
And you can add that to the motion, just say,
Right.
and we ask that you continue, or that they continue to work with staff on
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
If-
The other, are we all fairly agreed that that may be something we wanna add to the motion? She's nodding heads.
Yeah, I think it's something of that, I'm in agreement that we're certainly not, we should be providing specifics, right? I think I would like to add language, again, just as they continue to work with staff, and this would be more at the trustee level to decide if this parcel would be a good spot for public art, that would essentially require access, an easement of some sort or a permission of some sort if we were to put it there. But nothing stating, I don't think we should state it's required. I think we should just say that it's continue the discussion, right?
So we'd have two continues here, one, from what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong. Continue to work with staff, right, landscaping, to maintain the aesthetics, I guess, of that entrance point to Berthoud. But, and then the other one would be that they consider and have discussions about potential either public art or memorial or whatever.
Yeah, I think we could combine it into one. I mean, maybe we could use the term like, ask staff and the applicant to continue to work together to, I'm gonna honor the northern gateway of Berthoud through landscaping, or potentially landscape enhancements and public art.
Something like look for opportunities, enhancements, whether it's a gateway or whatever it is. I can't think if like on the comp plan it's called out as that, but it's that.
So landscape enhancements and public art.
Yeah.
Public art
I mean,
or
I think
can
that captures the sentiment of what we're just saying, is like, this is a
Listing those as
prominent intersection.
examples.
The public art, the wording of that, it's It's ambiguous for me, but maybe it falls within the scope of what we're saying, so.
Well, and we're putting it to the board of trustees
Exactly.
too, so I think at some point, we're sort of recommending that we pay special attention to the aesthetics of this place.
Yeah.
And then we allow the board of trustees to kind of weigh in on what that means, whether it's public art, whether it's enhanced landscaping, whether it's who knows what.
Maybe the board would say, and that's why I'm thinking maybe say public art or memorials or something. And because the reason I say that is because maybe it's appropriate that there be some type of statute there for someone who, like the founder of Berthoud or whatever, you know? And I don't want them to think it's just art as in the sense of like an art installation piece.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I guess what I had in mind is like, if, we saw a presentation earlier this week, Director Johnson was there, and they were presenting the art pieces that are gonna go on at I-25 in the center of the roundabout, so the eastern side will be really kind of tall, wispy, kind of wheat field kind of sculpture, and on the left side, what is the left side gonna be?
A tree.
A tree, yeah, trees, honoring Tree USA, Berthoud, all that, but all in kind of sculpture.
tree.
Yeah, well, it's actually a sculpture of a tree.
Oh,
Sculpture of multiple trees, but it, like, there is like some significance. It's not just like a abstract, like flowy piece for the sake of that.
That's always my concern with public art, is sometimes you just like throwing money at something and it's something to be meaningful.
Well,
Yeah.
art is like a big foundation for Berthoud. So I have no problem with if it was an art piece, particularly if it was by artists that live here in Berthoud.
Yeah.
But I wanna give the council
Mhm.
more flexibility by saying something like art or
Yeah,
It's an example.
memorial or
yeah,
something.
I think we
Makes
just
sense.
identify it
Yeah.
as a opportunity, and it gets in the record,
I like
and then it goes to the trustees,
like
and
that.
then, cause if there was a funding, they have to,
Right.
they gotta spend the money, we can't spend the money.
Any other language we would wanna add or conditions?
No, I just wanna add to that, to me, in my head, instead of, a green you've entered Berthoud, right? Flagstone seems to be such an iconic thing for this area, and, a beautiful thing that says Berthoud, and then is there other art around it? I don't know, but I would like to call out the actual name of the town.
Okay, you would like the name.
Yeah, I think, again,
Yeah.
it is the gateway, I thought that was a great term you used, going into Berthoud.
Even an art piece that has the Berthoud name in it would be kinda neat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion, but I don't know how to word any of this.
Well, I
defer to one of the more intellectuals on the crew.
I don't know, I think you get to do that
Oh,
one.
my God. Well, I just wanna.
One of you two. Oh, he's
That
got
I
it.
already suggested. May I ask one question?
Thank you.
Is there any sort of an overall plan for the city in terms of where we're like planning monuments, gateway monuments and that sort of thing?
Not that I have seen,
Okay.
however, I've not been here quite 3 months
Okay.
yet, it will be next week.
There you go.
And
So you're a
so-
quarter in almost.
Yes, yeah, so I've not seen a specific sign, I know that there in the comprehensive plan, there is an action item to talk about like direct wayfinding. And branding and marketing and kind of pulling everything together, which could be a component of,
This would be an
entry
opportunity,
signs and
yeah.
things like that. But right now, it's just mentioned as wayfinding in the
Okay.
comp plan.
I wanna make sure we don't get in front of our skis in terms of our purview. So that language probably takes care of that for us, just a touch.
So I did have another item for discussion, just that, cause I flagged it, so I figured we may as well talk about it. So I think we were all put a little bit at ease by the operations discussion of 6 AM to 10 PM. That is not something that is currently in the application. I don't actually know that it would be something we want to do, but, or if we can do as a condition of a conditional use, but if that was something from a security perspective that was really important to the commissioners, we might want to mention that operations as, operate as stated, so.
One of the pushbacks I would have
Yeah.
is things can change.
Sure.
And 5 AM might be better than 6 AM 3 years from now.
Sure.
And if we shoehorn him into a specific, then he'd have to get a variance or something, right, if he wanted to.
I would think so, yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring it up for discussion. is just-
I guess just one comment about that, and I appreciate your comment there, is that, there are some instances with small businesses where getting inventory or getting things out occurs or needs to occur at 5:30 or something, and in instances like that, they have to request a special code that can be used for that type of situation. So I think it's our general business operations for 99% of the customers are 6 to 10. There are special circumstances for a customer that again is a contractor, a business, something that needs access prior to that 6 AM where we identify like a one-time use or a special code for that type of situation. So
There's still noise ordinance that would govern too. So I mean, if there were an issue where there was somebody in there at 6 AM blaring the radio on their truck or whatever, that there's stuff that we have internal. I think it's a good point, but to Commissioner Wayne's standpoint, I sort of feel like you know your business. I wouldn't want to put something in here that's going to potentially negatively impact how you run your business.
Yeah, I worry a little about that too. I don't wanna hamstring your business,
right.
and I was trying to think of an alternative, like you say, you can only operate for a certain number of hours a day, but I don't even know if we have the ability to do that. And the only other one I was thinking was something along those same lines, just, it seemed like there was some concern by those who provided comments about crime and that kind of thing, and that's why, since you were going to provide security anyway, if we conditioned the use on the types of security that you've mentioned in your application or something, but I'm not even sure that's necessary.
I'm not an expert. I wouldn't feel comfortable adding something like
Yeah,
that into the
I
motion.
don't even know how you would define that.
Well, let me just test this with the commissioners. If the operations was 24/7, would you have a problem with it? There could be a sale of the business and then a new person comes in and they say we're 24/7. So I'm just testing it. I'm not saying,
You can
I'm not saying
always,
we have to put it on there. Just it put me at ease to know that, but I'm just wondering if the proposal was a 24/7 self-storage, would that change your mind on anything?
you could, and Ann's probably gonna give me a mean look if we're saying this. But, I mean, we could condition it so that if the hours of operation change, that they would have to come back in and request that we renew their conditional use permit. So you could do it something like that, and I'm telling you, we did this on one plan commission because we had a lot of fear about something that was gonna happen with a certain,
So my comment would be then are you gonna restrict A&W that they can't be 24 hours if they want, and you're gonna restrict all Napa, they decide they wanna expand their hours.
I mean, there's pros and
And then the other
cons.
thing is, I think you have to, there's a scope of reality, and if someone does buy the business, would they want to enhance a theft potential, or would they want to restrict it to? And you would think they would want to restrict it, so I think you can always find something if you wanna find, something, and I think their model is very good, and it seems like if anybody were to take that over, they would continue with this model.
yeah, what I would say is the national operators in the business, the publicly traded self-storage facilities, nobody does 24 hours. You don't even advertise, I mean, when you advertise 24 hours a day, the facilities that do offer that are viewed as less secure facilities. So I guess I would tell you to be rest assured that a facility of this nature, if we do have an opportunity to sell it at some point, the value of a facility is based upon how safe and secure it is. And part of that is controlling access to the appropriate times.
Does the fire district always have someone on site? 24/7?
Unless we're out of the house.
I mean, that's what I would say, of all the facilities, this would probably will be the absolute safest, like, that's my take on it, so.
Is there any way, Ann, to condition the special use so that if it becomes sold, that they have to come back before the plan commission and the board of trustees?
Instead of it making that a condition, what you could do is have that be a development standard that's put on the plat and recorded. And that development standard could be something like the hours of operation as stated in the application materials are going to be X to Y. But just know that sometimes that can be a problem if there would need to be maintenance, or if there was a fire, or at the facility, or if something was happening at the facility, that could also be misconstrued that they couldn't get in and do repairs, or they can't get in during that time as well.
The other thing I would say about if I were going to buy a piece of property and it said, if I buy this property, I have to go back to the city, that lowers the value of the property pretty significantly. Not to say people don't love cities, but you know, that's not a level of risk that real estate people develop real estate are willing to embrace, kind of going back and forth with cities. People who buy real estate that's already open and operating is so they don't have to go back to kind of open up a door of additional requests. Cause all of you are very, you're good to work with, collaborative. That's not always the case with councils or trustees.
I was just trying to
So-
way to accommodate your concern.
Well, and it was just a concern. I'm satisfied with the discussion. It was also just kind of wanting to think through because of all the public comments were strictly related to security almost. And I
Yes.
just wanna, and I think just the operations, I think gave folks a lot of comfort. I don't think the benefit of putting a condition like that on doesn't outweigh the cons, but I did just wanna discuss it.
Good point. In the record anyway, yeah.
And if I may, Madam Chair, so if the application would, if the land use would change drastically on the site, let's say instead of being a self-storage facility, it would change to another activity, they would need to potentially come back before you to make a change. And also remember the parameters on that original PUD for the uses that could even occur on this property is a lot more limited than what's in the zoning
true.
code right now. So the uses that can be here would be limited, and again, if that change would occur, they'd need to come back, potentially before you, depending on the nature of that change. And that was a good call, Lauren.
Alright, do we have any more conditions or ideas we wanna discuss at this point? Alright, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's a no.
Alright, so with that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move, since I've got the meditation.
Our
I,
hero.
I'll move to forward a motion of approval of the Berthoud Self-Storage Conditional Use Permit to the Town Board of Trustees due to the findings in the staff report, including compliance with land use code, the criteria for approval found in section 30-3-106, and the comprehensive plan to the town trustees for consideration, and with the following condition, that the applicant shall continue to work with staff to look for opportunities to enhance the landscaping along State Highway 287 and to determine if public art or similar can be incorporated into the site design.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Smith seconded. Then we have a roll call, Ms. Tovar.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Bethel,
Yes.
Commissioner Ween,
Yes.
Secretary Kurtz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Yes. Wonderful,
Congratulations.
wonderful, congratulations.
Thank you.
All of
I was gonna applaud, but
Nice job.
you said no applause earlier, so.
You don't like cities, no one likes self-storage.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bearing with us through that and for working with our staff. I know our process isn't always the quickest, and I know since we've had a few stumbles with staff, and thank God we have Ann now, that it probably wasn't as quick or didn't move as quick as you probably assumed that it might, so.
It's not like interest rates have gone up, so don't worry about it.
Thanks again.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, why don't we move on in our agenda? Thanks all of you for coming. We appreciate your participation, and if you're planning on staying, and wanna walk outside and have conversations, that's fine, but just make sure it's out in the foyer. Okay, so one of the things that we have on number 7 is our report by staff, but before we do that, why don't we talk about election of our own officers, as you are aware.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan resigned earlier this week, which leaves us without a chair. Ann and I had a chance to talk about that, and it just made sense that we all have input, at least for the next few, until August, I guess, is when we'd roll over again and have to make these decisions again, but at least until August, that you all, that we're all involved in what that decision is, you know, and who will serve in our officer roles until August, when we get to decide again. So, how do you all feel about that? Do you want to vote on those? We have 3 officers, as you know, chair, vice chair, and secretary.
I think it might be prudent to see who might be interested.
So you already, okay, so you do want to do that.
Yeah, I
Great.
think it's a good idea.
I would be interested in serving as chair. But I
You
also
were vice
realize
chair before, right?
for a few months, right?
For a minute.
But I also say that with the caveat that if there's someone else that's interested, I am old, so if someone else wants the experience of being
Can't
chair,
say that.
I have been the president of a national association twice and run national meetings and monthly meetings and that kind of thing, so I do have experience doing this.
So I have a question, what's the protocol in August? Are we mandated to have an election or change things?
I think
or-
we have to do it once a year.
Oh, okay,
So, but
okay.
we will change commissioners to a certain extent, I
What's the,
think.
what's the status
So-
of like terms and stuff? Do we know?
Well, my term is November.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll quick look at that, and I had asked the town clerk to give that information to me, and then I realized, oh, it's on the website, I could have found that
It's right
myself.
here.
Yeah,
And actually, I think it was Jan's term that was ending in
Hers
August.
was,
Right.
but wasn't there one more?
That's what we thought the
thought there
term,
were
the
2.
timing was gonna be.
Yeah.
I would second you for the chair, I would support that, again, we're gonna redo this again in a few months.
Yeah.
Who's the secretary now?
I'm currently the secretary.
So, I mean, this is just a recommendation, then we'll just, you step up, you become vice chair, and John
Whether you want
becomes,
to or
and
not.
John becomes,
I'm happy to serve as vice chair,
and John becomes secretary.
and John becomes.
Well, I think we have 3 nominees now.
We-
There you go.
Does anybody else want to do these things? Again, I don't wanna be presumptuous here, and
Abby, are you term limited or something, or?
No, this is my first term,
Okay.
and I believe from our past conversations, I would have the opportunity to apply again.
Cause
And-
aren't you filling in for someone who left the planning commission?
Oh, I don't know, actually, it's possible.
Yeah, I think you have a slightly truncated term.
Okay.
You do,
Because of
so you
that-
get
because
to,
of
you're
that.
fulfilling someone else's term, and then you can apply, from my understanding, 2 more times.
And when is that up?
Her term is up in November.
in August.
Can you disclose if you're
Abigail?
interested?
Oh, no, November,
I am
you're right.
interested.
Yep, November.
I thought we had 2 this
Yeah.
year and I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
think
so
it was
Jan was up in
Jan.
August and Abigail is up in November.
Yeah.
And do we need to entertain applicants, since we have an open spot?
Or Jan.
Yes.
Right, the Jan spot.
Yep, so the town clerk has been informed that there is a vacancy. And right now, the link to the application is not working. So we will get that link working and entertain individuals. And of course, the town board, they may or may not know that Jan resigned, but they will be informed and there will be a process for that selection.
And when we inform the board, what ends up happening is that they form a committee, and then that committee is who interviews the new applicants
Okay.
for your position.
So we have nominated positions, do we need to vote?
I would ask
I just
for a
wanna ask, I mean, Abby, you've been here longer, so like, I'm
So
just like,
I-
I'm happy to do it, but it's like,
Yeah.
you've earned it.
I
if you want it.
appreciate the
Yeah.
consideration,
Mhm.
and I certainly have thought about it, but I just think I'm happy with my role as
Sure.
commissioner right now, yes, I am.
Ditto.
Then I would serve secretary if Chris, if you would be for.
Yeah, I'm fine taking vice chair.
So we would need someone to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, what we just discussed.
Which means you get to write, you get to
Chair,
write
the
the
vice
motion.
chair, the secretary.
Second?
I'll second, since I'm not one of those.
Can you second your
Aye.
Then we would-
election?
Yeah.
Do we need a roll call vote, right?
in this situation, I think you could do all in favor.
All right, all in favor by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, abstentions. When I was national board president, one board member used to get really mad if I didn't also say nays and abstentions, so I've been used to saying abstentions.
Well, yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Lauren, you did a nice job, but you have not done that before, have you? I have not. Have you presented?
Yes, I did one other.
Looked great, you did a nice job.
Thank you.
Very clear, concise.
One of the other things too I wanted to bring up tonight was I noticed from last week that there were some notes about us having a time period at the beginning of the meeting where people can comment on our land use plan. Is that something that you want to do and incorporate at the beginning of the meeting?
Can you expand on that just a little?
Well, I can because I was the one who proposed
yeah.
it, which actually, did we approve minutes for last meeting?
Yes.
You
Yeah,
did,
okay.
yeah, we
Yeah.
approved minutes, yeah.
Okay.
But we didn't make any decisions, you just brought them up as.
Ideas.
Yeah, and that came from a discussion that actually I had with Director Johnson, and she was just providing some insight into, her experience elsewhere in northern Colorado. So kind of the two items was, one, do we want to do Pledge of Allegiance, because that's somewhat optional, I guess, our trustees do it, we did it tonight,
Like that.
I did it
That's
because
good.
I saw that it had been mentioned.
Thank
you
for that.
Who is gonna say
Yeah,
no to
and,
this?
I'm fine with doing it. And then the other item I brought up, I guess not recommendation, but just the knowledge from Director Johnson is that, so we have public comment for specific agenda items, right? But we have these underlying documents, right, that kind of govern us. So it's the development code, it's the comp plan. I mean, we also have like mountain overlay plan. So I think what she was suggesting we discuss is, do we want to have a general public comment period limited to 2 to 3 minutes per person, where they wouldn't be talking about a specific agenda item, but instead they could come and air.
So it's like
So-
open forum, what?
Kind of.
I hate to use the expression, please forgive
Yeah.
me, but a bitch session, which is okay, you get a lot out of that. I mean,
Yeah.
they're complaining and concerned about what's going
Yeah.
on.
But I think it would have some guardrails. It would have to they couldn't just come and complain about
Right,
national
say
politics.
that.
They would have to come and
It would
talk
have to be
about
on
stuff
the-
that's. under
And would you
our
set a
purview.
time, not for each individual, but just overall?
I think we'd have to time it.
I don't know.
Do or don't?
I don't know if we can do
I
for
do
the
too.
whole segment, yeah, cause I mean, I guess I would say my gut is that this would be used infrequently, but it's more of like a
Absolutely.
democratic courtesy
Absolutely.
Yeah.
of do we want this on the agenda? I mean, I guess Director Johnson, is this used infrequently in your experience?
It depends, so counties normally do it because they have bigger population, more diverse issues that are being faced. Municipalities, I've seen maybe 1 or 2 use it. If you do choose to open the door, just remember there are unintended consequences, sometimes that can happen. But you should keep those guardrails, like you were saying, pretty narrow, that it is comments on the comprehensive plan or the land use code. And it can't be anything on a land use matter that may come before you, because then
And I was gonna ask about that, cause I was worried about that causing conflicts too, and I thought about that. So that's one issue I would have, is I'm worried that we'd have to be very careful. We have to be very controlling as far as making sure that it doesn't cause us conflicts. And then the other thing I worry about, and it's funny because where I work, we are required to take so many hours of training every year. You guys probably have to do that too. One of the trainings I literally just took this week was on communications, and what they said was when you're doing something like this, requesting feedback from people, the worst thing you can do is not act on that feedback or allow them to go too far in what that feedback is. So there was the 2 things they warned against, and so that I would worry about too, that by not acting on something they saying, does that just dilute the exercise of doing it?
I think that's a good point. I feel like if we're inviting the public to come and testify, they should have some expectation that testimony affects the record and affects ultimately potentially our decision making, right? And so if they're just gonna come up and if somebody's gonna come up and talk about how Bertha's growing too fast, that's, we're sort of governed by comp plan, and so you could have somebody that makes it their sort of like mission to come in and kind of grouse about growth patterns or whatever, and they would have every right to, but there's nothing we can do about it. Or there's not much we can do.
No, but what you can do, first of all, I love the transparency, I think it's important, but what you can do is you can explain. And you know, in no uncertain terms, we have a plan, we stick with it, it's been sanctioned or whatever.
Mhm.
And at least they've had a chance to voice it and they've gotten a very logical response,
So you're saying
the
set
other
up
thing is,
guardrails.
and we need to put something out on the site that lets people know, hey, you know, at the planning commissions, there's always an open forum at the beginning, you can come and, you know, air any comments you would like. So I think it's, you know, it takes a little courage to do something like this, cause there is unintended consequences, but I also think in the scope of being open, caring about our residents and transparency, I think it's a very positive thing.
Do the
So-
trustees have this?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, and they limit 3 minutes. But for planning commission, it should be limited definitely to the comp plan
Topics.
and the land use code.
Topics, yeah.
And I don't know, Erin, are you still on?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have an opinion about this for planning commissions?
Yeah, I would tend to discourage
Sure.
this. You get into First Amendment issues, which is really an area you don't wanna
Yeah.
wade into.
Good point.
Everybody's a volunteer, it makes your meetings longer. And obviously, the next group could say, we're gonna suspend and do away with this public comment session, but then people have, you know, decided that they.
Yeah, then you're taking something
Yeah.
away.
They're taking something away. So, and finally, I think, you know, there's a big difference between, what planning commissioners do at the municipal level and what trustees do. The trustees are policymakers,
Mhm.
right? And the planning commission you're not policymakers. You are an advisory committee that applies, the law to the facts to the law, and, makes a recommendation to the trustees.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't see a lot of utility in adding that to an agenda. And I see that, you know, lawyers are very conservative. I see, I see potential problems with doing it.
I mean, I agree with the sentiment of having it, but I also am somewhat comforted by that. You know, through the town, a person can go to the trustee meeting,
Right.
right?
Right.
Even if it would apply to a planning commission, I mean, the trustees approve the comp plan too, the trustees, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Comments are
so
gonna
much
be
a
like
broader
0 to 1%.
responsibility.
There just isn't gonna be any, but it's a nice gesture.
No.
So
yeah.
what do we vote?
I don't know if you need to vote. I think maybe just go down and say, do you wanna do it? And then say yes, yes, no,
Okay.
no.
Do we have so I know that people can email you directly about proposed developments, is there like a general like comments email that people can access, or is that just email you?
For staff?
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. There is a planner, a general planner email,
Mm.
and I do check it. I'm probably, once we are in the process of searching for a senior planner, we'll probably just have personal emails instead of that rogue planner email.
Sure.
I think sometimes things can get lost, but yeah, people could call me, they can email me, they can stop by and see
I
me.
think that gets to your point. If there's somewhere someone that can answer a question and refer them to a process or a document or something, then that takes care of sort of Aaron's concerns about our being burdened with that. And if staff is kind of diligent in responding to those, then we're still providing that service and that sort of that exchange to the community. And there's always a trustee meeting where they go and talk to their elected officials.
And I do think that it has a better place with our elected officials because they have a broader responsibility than we do.
We had it when I was in Longmont. I was on the planning commission in Longmont for probably 9 years. And I could probably count on one hand on my hands people used it. So I mean, I understand the sentiment, but it really just wasn't used. And I think there may be other avenues we could direct folks to.
I'd like to do it. So if we're not voting, I don't know where you go. You got
Well, you can
comments.
vote. It
No, it
makes
doesn't matter to me.
difference.
It's just gonna, we could slightly shorten the process in the information guide and slot this right in there for 2 minutes and we wouldn't add any length to our meeting.
Well, and have you seen this happen like quarterly, or, I mean, would it be something we have to do every meeting?
You wouldn't have to do it every meeting, I mean, maybe you could even, if you're gonna have something, but then you're only gonna do it once, then it kind of becomes a
Like
special
notify,
thing, and then,
Right,
you never know what you're going to get.
right.
Yeah.
So if you were going to do it, you should do it all the time, but if you're not going to do it, people can still approach you as a planning commission person, member. And then if you can answer the question, great, if not, you just refer them to staff, because in the end, that's what happens anyway. It's like,
The
okay,
reality is, we're not gonna get any.
Right.
But at least we've offered it out there if somebody does wanna say something, but we watch. They're just, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Do you want, okay, let's ask then. Well, I'll start. I'm like Aaron, and of course I have a legal background, so I kind of have that trepidatious view of things sometimes.
Sure.
And I worry about kind of the legal ramifications, again, the conflict that we could get ourselves into and get in trouble. The First Amendment issues, which is something I hadn't thought about, but now that Aaron says that, I could see where that could be a problem. And we're supposed to be done now.
There you go.
Is the First Amendment free speech? And how would free speech get curtailed?
Well, if you have to curtail it, because we have 20 minutes, for example, or there's probably, I just, and then the other thing, like I said, I worry about if we're going to take feedback, but there's nothing we can do with it. Like if they say, well, we think the land use plan needs to be changed to blah, 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 I'm not sure what we can do with that. And then what does that do? It kind of undermines public confidence in this group, so I would say I'll do it if that's what y'all wanna do, but
It's
I'm
going
not
your way.
excited about it.
Find out soon. Okay.
I say no. I think we follow counsel of our council. And I think if it comes up and it's something where folks are looking for it, I think we look for the avenues to address their questions or whatever it is. Yeah, I feel like I'm a no.
It's a coin flip for me. I gotta think this through. I understand I like the sentiment. I like being able to put it out there, especially since we see we're kind of the front lines of one of the bigger issues in Berthoud, which is growth, right? So having it out there is a benefit. But the thing that does kind of give me pause is that we can't really do anything unless because we're not the policy arm of the town, right? So it would be 3 minutes, somebody could voice a concern of some sort, and we would literally just have to thank them for their time, and they would.
But I think explaining is doing something.
Yeah.
So you're abstaining or neutral?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go no, just because, but I wanna say that I think we should consider it. I guess, be open to it in the future. Be open to it in the future if we think that there's a demand for it. I guess I just not seeing that there's also a demand for it. But if we started to have people
that's
come,
fair.
if we started to have people show up and wanting to talk, but again, why would they show up if there's not
Why
something
would
on
they
the
show-
agenda?
Hey, what am I doing Thursday night?
Yeah, well,
Let's go to a planning commission
Because I
meeting.
don't,
And sit there
yeah,
for
I
2
know.
You would be surprised.
Well, no, I mean, why would they show up if there's not a spot on the agenda for general
Yeah.
concerns?
Well, I'm missing our gentleman that's usually here, so.
Yeah. Well,
I know that everyone's already started voting, but we also are missing Commissioner Commissioner Feldbush, so I would also be open into continuing this conversation at the next meeting and
Yeah.
getting
I
her
agree with that.
perspective
That's a
and
good point.
just, I mean, maybe then we all have a little bit more time to think about it, cause this is the first time we've really had a real conversation
Yeah.
about it.
Unless you're a
that's fair.
solid no, then the two would be outvoted.
I am open to a conversation with the full commission and
Alright.
Why don't we then defer this to our next meeting and put that on the
Okay.
agenda and discuss it?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Because I
I'll
would
be
like
thinking
to,
about it when I'm walking the dog.
Yeah.
I would like to give
I'm
Commissioner
gonna weigh the
Feldbush
pros
an
and cons.
opportunity.
But I've heard that the five of you say yes on the pledge, so even if she said no, the five of you had
I
said
think we're all
yes.
in agreement.
And I apologize for being presumptuous there, but just thought after I
No,
read
no,
that,
it's
I
a
thought,
good test.
We live here.
Yeah.
Talk about contentious subjects though, I mean, you could have someone in the audience who is incredibly against that, so.
well,
Yeah.
no, this is my third planning commission, the other two, we always did it every meeting.
Which,
I'm a big
that's
supporter.
their issue, not ours, if they're, you know, that's me.
There isn't a subject today that there isn't an
Oh, you're right about that.
opposite viewpoint with passion.
You were right about that.
Okay.
Are we on to reports?
Yes, we're on staff reports.
Yeah, so we talked about, you did the election, which was great. Our next meeting is on May 25th, and right now there is a land use case that's scheduled. There's just one. One of the things I thought of doing is following that, if it's not too late, if you'd like to have a work session just going over the anatomy of a staff report. You know, and how do we develop those staff reports and what's in it and how to use that for your deliberation, as well as then, you know, the attachments that come with it and kind of the process. We could then break and go out of the formal meeting and go more into a dialogue and a work session on that. If that's something you're interested
Do you think
in,
it's a short agenda for that?
it should, well, famous
I mean,
last
we do
words,
have- we
so
do
you should
have
never
time to
ask
do it
that.
nothing. I mean, do we wanna save that for a nothing meeting and then just meet?
Well, you don't have nothings in the near future.
Okay.
So just
Growth.
telling you, just being honest with you there. So that, let's see, on the 25th, let me see here. Oh, again, I cannot predict, and if I would tell you if I thought it would be short or long, that might be, you know, twisting your opinion about things. But if it doesn't go long and if you want to have just a discussion, it doesn't have to be long. Or maybe you can tell me, nope, I've got it, I get the staff report, I don't need a discussion, and that's okay too, and we can talk about something
When
else.
the first topic goes long, we decided to table that till
Yeah, we could table,
Exactly.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then so I'll be prepared, I think that's what I hear you saying, I'll be prepared, and it could be a very short conversation too. And then the other thing is I'll do, and I hadn't planned ahead, but I'll bring a card and you all can pass it around and sign it for Jan.
I almost did that,
And
and I actually pulled one out and stuck it on my desk and it's still sitting there, but, yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Yep, we'll get one and then you can pass it around, we'll get it mailed to her. Yeah. And other than that, let's see, were there any items presented?
Wait,
Oh,
can
so
you,
Harvest 47, that was the small subdivision that had some of the Habitat homes. We were able to get that really quickly onto town trustees hearing last week and they did approve it.
wonderful.
So that is the only thing that's happened since
Okay, great.
we last met.
Can you share with us what would be the issue, what the land use application for the 25th, or no?
Well, I probably shouldn't,
Oh,
since
okay.
you're gonna get it. And if I tell you about it, then I don't want there to ever be even an appearance that I've been
Bias, yeah.
preloading you with information.
Okay.
But you'll get the
Fine.
packets.
Mhm.
And Jonathan has been making I think 2 copies of the packets and leaving them on the
Jonathan.
counter. So if anybody else needs a copy of the packet, just let us know and we'll make more than 2. But right now, just 2 paper copies have been on the counter on that Thursday after you get your link.
I saw an email, but then I didn't see a response, so I usually take advantage of that, but I
Oh,
didn't.
okay, all right. Yes, well, I got the email from Karen and I didn't wanna reply to all
Okay.
because of the whole, when she replied, then it's a meeting.
Yes.
So I sent it back saying, yep, there will be one. So if anybody else wants one,
Okay.
just make sure we know. And just remember, we're closed on Fridays, so let me know, that early on Thursday.
Well, Jonathan's been very kind and before left them, even on Friday, outside that little, I don't know what you call that little window you walk up.
Yeah.
But, so I've been able to get in on
If
Friday.
I know there's one to be
grab
there,
one.
I'll pick one up too, that's great.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll always make two.
Okay.
If anybody else wants one, let us know.
Okay,
I'm trying to be paperless.
that's good.
I know you're good. I
I don't know.
I have a small computer. I could where I can
It
post.
doesn't
laptop
always
things.
work, but
No,
that's my
it
goal.
doesn't work,
Always
yeah.
trying to-
So
And-
there won't be any public access on Fridays because we'll have the gate down. So
Even
you won't be
for,
able to get upstairs on Fridays because the
but
gate
even
is
for
down.
the investment company?
And
Don't they have-
Edward Jones should be open, so the gate should be open.
Okay.
They'll be open during the Edward Jones hours, that would be the more appropriate answer. And I'm sorry, I don't know what those hours are.
It's such an interesting building, have these businesses in the same building as the city hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. All right, is there anything else that we need to, any reports that you all have?
I just wanna tell you, thank you for the agenda notes, hard copy today, and the motions, that was very helpful. And then we sat in, it was with the, I guess it's the board of trustees, and I was a little bit of a brainstorming, things got discussed, but I thought one of the things they said in that meeting, cause we were talking about landscaping and water and things like that the city has the town has resources to enforce if people aren't complying with the landscaping need mandated. So I'm just gonna give you an example. When you come into, I think it's TPC Parkway, I'm not even sure what the winding road is that goes down. Those trees are garbage. I mean, they're, again, half of them are dead, half of them were placed last. It literally, is it someone's job to physically go out and look at stuff that's just so unacceptable? And I'm, that's personal for me because I live there, but I'm just curious.
So compliance, of course, could be a full-time job for several people and we don't have that staffing. So if you see something that doesn't look right, send me an email and either I will go out and look at it or we'll see if the compliance officer will go out and look at it because I've noticed there is a drive-through that I sometimes frequent and their landscaping is dying as well.
Oh no, it was dead, they had no water. They put sod down last year and they did not water and it all turned into cement.
So on a couple of those, they're still in warranty and we will not release their bond until all of that is completed. And there are other instances where the landscaping could be released, but again, the landscaping is approved, that's that you need to maintain it as was approved.
So again, the entryway to TPC is over 4 years old now and it's dirt. And again, I would have thought, it's not us, we don't do that, but I know there's some entity who's responsible for,
Is this the roundabout?
it's after the roundabout.
As you're
It's-
heading
as you're
towards the
going-
gatehouse?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So is it within Heron Lakes?
yes and no.
Okay,
It's on the outside gate, but it's also on the inside. The gates are not functional, they're not allowed to be, but they're there.
okay, so it's the approach to the gates
Yes,
from the roundabout?
yes.
Okay, that's fine. I can contact the developer and let them know that there have been complaints and ask them to replace their landscaping.
I think I'm gonna be on a metro district. Is there any conflict of interest with me being in this position and being on a metro district?
If that metro district comes before us,
Okay.
then you would need to disclose that and then probably walk out of here
Okay.
for that particular hearing.
Hmm.
But if just because you're on the metro district board doesn't mean you couldn't still fulfill your duties for other things, other land use matters, but just anything that would come up with that metro district, you should recuse yourself.
I think TPC has 12 metro districts within it.
Really?
Wow, that's a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah, I think our only restrictions is we can't serve in another municipal capacity, so we can't be a trustee and a commissioner,
Okay.
or I don't think you can be on the tree committee or the preservation committee and be a commissioner, so any of the official kind of commissions.
But I think if it's not a city-controlled
Yeah,
government unit, like if you were on the board for the fire district, or like I'm on the board for the library, they're not city-controlled governments, so
yeah.
you can do those. But
yeah, exactly, yeah, it's just not a municipal, so, for town of Berthoud, yeah. I did have are you?
Thank you, yes.
No reports.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought we were coming this way. So where are the two things? So one thing is, I really appreciated the work session that we had with the town on the raw water. And I just wanted to see if there was an opportunity. I got wind that we're finishing our water and sewer master plan. So if there was a way to obtain a brief on that when it's complete and appropriate. Maybe like we're doing with the anatomy of a staff plan, maybe somebody could pop in and give a 15-minute presentation, but that's, to me, that's even more pertinent to what we do a lot of times is
Exactly.
the treatment plant and downstream. But just because I noticed that was happening, I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could get a brief on that.
Yep, so there will be a work session, a study session with the town board of trustees at the end of May or early June.
Okay.
And when they have that, I'll let you know when that is, and you can either watch on Zoom or come to that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That would
Could
be great.
I had one more thing. I think it was before my time, but as you're, I think it's Mount View, right, heading out towards I-25, the main road. There's a pretty massive project going on right out of town, east of town, and it looks like it has to be residential. Could someone just give me the Reader's Digest
Oh,
version?
you're saying you go into that underpass and then, okay, I
No,
know what you're talking about.
No, after you go through the roundabout, about another mile or so,
That County Line
on the
Road.
right side of the road, there's
Yeah.
a massive,
It's Homestead.
that's Homestead.
Homestead.
How many homes approximately, any idea?
Thousands
Wow.
or
It's big.
hundreds.
It's
Yeah,
big.
Farmstead.
Farmstead,
Yeah,
not Homestead.
Farmstead.
And it's all single family?
And there's also Fickle Farms in there. There's Paired
Farmstead's the
Homes.
big one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the big one that's
Yeah.
got multiple
Farmstead
phases
too.
and stuff. And there's actually gonna be a roundabout at, I think, yeah, there's a roundabout at like County Line Road and Mountain.
Oh,
I don't think
Yeah.
they've decided that yet.
Oh, that's right, that was like a
Yeah.
CDOT thing still?
Yeah.
Wow.
okay,
That's
It's
thanks.
very, I think that we were
Yeah.
at the same meeting and, but yeah, it's $6 million.
Ooh.
Roundabout.
So
Farmstead
I
too.
think the town is re-looking at, is that how we wanna spend $6 million?
Since you're thinking of money, so we talked about the fire station. I mean, that's in some capital budget, the funding for that, is that how that works?
Well, they're a special district,
Yeah,
so
they're their own
the
district.
town doesn't pay for them.
Oh.
And so they'll have to work out the agreement with the developer, whether it's, donation or purchase or whatever. But then the district, once they determine that's where they're going, then, staff will see a site plan for that.
So Farmstead too, now that doesn't have 1,000 homes in it. And
Well,
if that's
just
the,
that whole area, that Fickle Farms, Farmstead,
the Fickle Farm, yeah, which is kind of adjacent, and then you have Harvest 47, which is right there too, so.
And was that
So-
done years ago, do you recall, of the
No.
initial approval?
No, the approvals for like Farmstead too, we did part of it was it last year? And then Harvest 47, we just did the final plat, right? You guys did, I was here. And the Fickle Farm one, that was a while back, the addition of Fickle Farm and the extension of the Pioneer Park.
It's gonna
That
be one of
was
the biggest
about
projects,
I
so
think
the
I saw
town has
that
had,
one,
right?
but yeah,
Yeah, I think
but yeah, I might be the only one who saw the Fickle Farm.
and I may have over exaggerated, it might not be thousands
It's
of
big,
lots.
it's
I'm
big.
sure there are
No,
hundreds of
thousands
lots.
of homes.
There you go. I thought you were talking about when you went out to 25, you go under that, there's a roundabout there, and you go under the underpass, and there's something they're building on the left side, and I
Oh.
can't figure out what it is. But yeah, like,
That's another one that's interesting, that's that Centera, whatever, it's whatever else, but it's like a Centera type development planned,
Yeah, Turion.
Turion, right?
So is that like unincorporated Berthoud going out to I-25, or what do you call that space?
That's Berthoud, we call it Berthoud East. And eventually it will all fill in, but it is in the town of Berthoud.
So there's a solid black line we would see if we saw the town going all the way out.
All these little
Well,
towns went out and reached
Which
and
is-
It
grabbed their
actually kind of
intersection
hugs
at I-25.
56, doesn't it?
And our,
Mhm.
and our fire district has
Yeah.
for a few years now tried to, they do so many runs out to I-25, they've been wanting to put a fire station out that way from Berthoud East, because so it'd be a lot shorter
We kind of
distance,
said that tonight, yeah.
you know, and
Okay,
they've
good
run into
question.
all sorts of problems with that one, that's why he was chuckling a bit, I think.
It's but it's a little bit of an island, cause I think we narrow, once you get past Farmstead, like, so right around County Line Road, our boundary, or at least our growth management area gets really narrow and runs along 56.
Yeah.
And then once you get out towards Loves, it becomes a balloon again.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
And-
On the other
really
side?
bizarre.
Yeah,
Love
over,
to see a map on one.
It's
as well.
really
Yeah.
bizarre.
It's in your e-notebook.
Okay.
The
If you
town
look at it-
zoning
if
map
you-
is
if
in
you
your
look at the
e-notebook.
Alrighty then.
But one way to think about it is, I mean, so it's a way to get additional revenue for the town at I-25, which is a
Sure.
common thing in the Front Range of Colorado. There's lots of
Yeah.
going out the
All
I-25.
the towns from both sides fight for
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
energy.
I had one other thing to talk about. So as we're getting into summer, we're kind of looking at our vacation schedule, and I foresee potentially one or two conflicts with probable planning commission meetings. I'm going to try to avoid them, but if they come up, does it at all help? Is it helpful for you to have, okay, like, even though it's 2 months off, like, I know that this date isn't gonna work and I'm gonna be.
Yeah, that would be great, and you can talk about them and we can kind of keep that calendar because there are excused and unexcused absences discussed in the bylaws.
You're right.
And so if we know there's a big land use case coming and you happen to be gone on that night, if we can plan ahead,
Right,
you know, we always want to make sure that we're gonna have quorum.
Mhm.
Because
right.
that's embarrassing when we don't.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
And so if we had quorum, yeah, that would be 4.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but things happen and life happens, but if we again can plan ahead.
Yep.
Then we can then kind of schedule around
Yeah,
things.
okay.
And summer, you know, it's summer, you wanna
Mhm.
take a vacation,
Yeah,
take a
yeah.
vacation.
We're trying to minimize it, but yeah, I just thought, for a while, even like in 2022 and 2021, we were really busy. There were times where like, they were really long meetings, but stuff got consolidated. I'm not suggesting that we need to like have a consolidation effort, but maybe if other folks, had schedule conflicts and we realized ahead of time, like we would just not have a meeting that day.
I guess
So-
that begs the question, are there that many things in the pipeline right now that we should be concerned about? Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of things in the pipeline.
Okay.
Answer, yes.
And there are some that we don't know if they're going to be a controversial hearing or not. And so we try not to stack a lot of things on an agenda that may be controversial because you'd be here until midnight. And so we try to spread things out just so that it is more thoughtful for you all, because I know for me, after 9 o'clock, my brain turns to oatmeal. So I'm not as
Pretty good
sharp as
staying
I am
power.
at 5 in the morning.
Okay, I'll send you dates and not asking to be scheduled around, I just wanted to know if it was at all helpful.
Well, if
or-
anybody else knows
Allows.
too, that you
Yeah.
have
Mhm.
like a vacation plan, it would be helpful to let Ann know.
Because then we can't, because we are looking ahead at several hearings, and so we will know we can't do it then, and how can we balance, the hearings? Because again, people come and they volunteer they're here because they care, you're here because you're volunteering. We want to make sure that the whole process is meaningful.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, so vacations or travel through the end of August should be sent to.
Yeah,
Yep, sounds good, and I'll just keep a little sticky note running.
We start our calendar. That's good.
I don't have anything else to add, just that.
Anyone else have something they wanna raise? Well, I think then, and Robert's rules would say that all we have to do is say we're gonna adjourn, that's a non-debatable motion. And it doesn't have to be voted on, so
Aye.
you just say, I move to adjourn, don't even need a second.
Alright.
Do you have to gavel? Is that part?
I could.